There's rumors, Amanda, that some of them have abilities.
Oh, yeah. I have seen things. Maybe Superman was some kind of beacon for them to creep back from the shadows. I want to assemble a task force of the most dangerous people on the planet who I think can do some good.
Suicide Squad is undoubtedly one of the biggest films of the year, and it's just arrived at the movies. It's the latest blockbuster from DC Comics, and as they have such an extensive history, this entire episode of Making the Movies will be looking at the franchise. Of course, we start with their new installment, Suicide Squad. Rather than your average heroes versus the villains, this time around, bad guys team up to defeat even worse enemies.
The DC universe is, Superman, Batman, they have their main characters, but there's all these little characters that pop in that fight against, the superheroes. And what I liked about the movie is that we get to represent these comic book heroes who are villains in a way that we have to save the world.
We sort of landed on the separation between being a bad guy and being evil. Probably about 3 weeks in, we landed on that idea that it's not a movie about good versus evil, it's a movie about bad versus evil.
I think the mistake is to try and make the hero like the squeaky clean, good guy, whatever. And the best thing about the Suicide Squad is none of them are good guys and they're all messed up.
They're bad guys.
Exactly. And if anything goes wrong, we blame them. We have built-in deniability.
What makes you think you can control them?
Because getting people to act against their own self-interest is what I do for a living.
Why did I tackle Suicide Squad? For me, it really became about world creation. And I've always been a comic book fan. I grew up on comics. I've loved DC Comics since I was a kid. Batman, Superman. As I was really young, it was Superman. Then I really kind of fell in love with Batman and what he represented and this idea of justice. And then I think as you kind of grow up, maybe you identify with the villains a little bit and what are they about. And as a filmmaker, it's interesting, you go and you make a comic book movie, everybody loves the good guys. Everybody loves the heroes. But what's going on with the villains? And how do you make an audience fall in love with the villains the same way they automatically love the heroes? And that was the real test for me.
Are you the devil?
All you need to know is you work for me.
So that's it, huh? We're the patsies.
This film is directed by David Ayer, who had to create a dark and grim yet colourful world for this heavy character-driven piece. The whole movie's pretty over the top, which is of course intentionally done, but in order not to exaggerate that, the world had to feel real.
David is not cheesy. That's his whole thing. I mean, he said, I'm not going to do this unless I can make this world somehow grounded in some sort of truth.
You get this realism, it pulls the guts out of these creatures and you see them bond with each other, but in this very dark, gritty world that could almost be reality. There's a lot of parallels to how we live.
That's the beautiful thing about this movie and this whole process is it wasn't just all about, lights and colors and destruction and, characters that are kind of familiar in cartoon form, it was a lot richer than that.
Each shot and each character, each shot revealed the darkness of the world, but also the vulnerability of the world, the humanity of it.
Stay tuned for a whole lot more Suicide Squad. Later on in Making the Movies, we'll get to know this guy a bit better.
Oh, I'm not gonna kill you. I'm just gonna hurt you. Really, really